So we can put right next to this. So there's this, and let me see if I can study this. There you go. A little bit better. Shoreline Cruises, boat ride tickets, right here, available. And it's smart. It's outside. It's here in Museum Park in the city of Chicago. Let's see how long before they tailgate me or something to bring out frustrations in me, doing something wrong to me, as I try to put out a positive post. Let's see, Chicago, it's satanic nature, it seems, with me. But anyways, so you get that, but you can set up an outdoor booth and get, bookings on there too. So it's just not a ticket now. You can book and schedule sometime in the future as well. And they can do enticement. If you book another one, you get 20% off. So a BOGO, buy one, get one, BOGA, buy one, get a 20% discount. BOGA, buy one, get, or let's put it BOGD, but that's BODA, buy one, get discount. BOGD, buy one, get discount. And second, so buy one, or you can go buy one, get one at discount. And so BOGO, buy one, get one, and after it you put the @ sign and you say discount. Buy one, get one at discount. So anyways, you get the shoreline before sunrise, twilight, actually the best time of day. So they can schedule into the future, but so can all these places. And they can also, at the front, you can use your purchase tickets after you go through to buy a season pass. So Shoreline Cruises could offer season passes. Truly. And so you can buy one, get one at another date, or you can get a season pass. Season pass gives you one cruise a week. Truly. Great America has season passes. You can have a hopper pass that you do from each week. You get a different museum. So you can go to the Field Museum one week, the Planetarium the next week, the Shedd Aquarium the next week, and that's 3: Planetarium, Shedd Aquarium, and then the Museum in Science and Industry the 4th week, and that's 4 weekends in a month. And then every month it can rotate and it starts over again, but you get to pick the beginning. So you can have it where you can pick the beginning, the second, the third, and obviously by default you get the 4th. So it's a hopper pass with flexibility in selection. So if you went to the Planetarium and it starts over in a month, the season pass of those 4, you could go to the Planetarium again the next week. And that will be your first one in the rotation. Then you have to choose what you're going to use for, of the 3 left, for the next week. And you can only go one time per month. And so you have to go to all. You can pass and it's not left over. So if you don't use it, it's a use it or lose it. It's a season pass. And you don't want to give a discount or anything. You want to incentivize them to go. The point is getting butts in the park. Great America needs butts in the park. The museum needs. They can do virtual tours and that, but that doesn't feed the food court. That doesn't sell as much memorabilia. Because when you're at the ball game and everything, yeah, people see things online. But as I put out before with concerts and that, that's why the Grateful Dead continuously toured. They didn't make the money really from tickets. Truly, they made the money from all the swag they sold at every show. They didn't even charge for their music. You could, if at the show, you could freely record it and you could freely exchange it. Now with YouTube, you can put it on there and pass it freely between people, and as it gets more views, YouTube will pay you. So again, it creates this situation. Okay. So on the outside. It creates this situation where you think, okay, how can I leverage the Grateful Dead? Well, now you can do it better than them. You have TikTok you can put it on. And if you get a lot of clicks on your shorts for the music, or YouTube for the longs, YouTube short, maybe Facebook and others, that maybe you have the ability to do way better than the Grateful Dead. And they weren't putting out original soundtracks, but each concert, because of the venue and stadium, it sounded different. Truly. And then they would improvise in each concert, because I have a lot of Deadhead friends. So, truly, they would improvise like, it's great to be in Chicago. Let me hear you now. And truly, Shy Tom. That makes it unique. Like, New York, New York, let me hear you now. The city that never sleeps, New York, New York. I wanted Chicago to be the city that never sleeps. Meaning that was running 24/7. Because the one thing they don't understand is that other people get ahead of you. But if you're working 24/7, you got 3 8-hour shifts like firefighters should have. Truly, they shouldn't do 1 day on, 24 on, 72 off. Fuck that shit. And that gets them not prepared. Having 1 day on and then 72 off. It's not like they go to fires every day. But they're less prepared. They're not in shape. But if they're there 5 days a week, and yes, you have part-time firefighters that fill in the other 2 days. There are people that just work part-time. You have a compressed shift. Here, I'll show you on Tumblr, that compressed shift. So you have people who work 5 days a week, and then people that work 3.5 days a week. They do 40 hours in 3.5 days. Why? Because it gives you coverage for vacations. So they cover the 2 weekend days, and you get a 1.5 day coverage of extra manpower that can be plugged in different places. They can rotate between stations to give vacation time. So that 1.5 days, they can basically rotate and plug in other places. So it allows for vacation. So they should be working 3 8-hour shifts. and their preparedness. They're in there. They're every day doing drills. Truly, every day you got to clean the hose, maintain the trucks, go through protocol. So when the shit happens, they have way more experience because they're running, and you can run scenarios and everything else within the station. They can do virtual training in the station. Truly, they should have a gym in the station, and then they have a Stairmaster. Truly, a Stairmaster. And it must be made like real steps in a building. And you got to carry the hose up the Stairmaster. So you only get one railing, and the railing will be on one side of you, maybe, or they can give two railings, but it has to represent a true hallway. It's wide as a hallway, the Stairmaster. And the steps are like a building. So you got to carry a hose to the 99th floor of the Sears Tower. The hose isn't going to get up there by themselves unless you're going to have a helicopter unit drop the hose at the top, which could be smart. But not everywhere has a roof deck, does it? But again, you could have a helicopter, and we underutilize them. And a helicopter truly manned, and they use the same drop lines they use in the military, and they can drop down the hoses right on top of the roof. So they just go to the roof, and they can drop the men on the roof as well, so you don't have to climb 99 stories. They can have Black Hawk helicopters, and then they can have a special lift helicopter if they need be to put a pumping station on the roof. Truly. Now you have to have redundancy, and with helicopter safety and all the things I put out there, it's impossible for them to crash and impossible for it to drop. So you don't have to worry about them falling out of the sky. Truly. Because engines don't just fail. If you're using the right lubricants and everything, it's impossible. Zero is the hero. And so they can put a pumper station on the roof. So you can create portable pumper stations. Truly. And then they can drop a pumper station. And then they can have water modulars. Truly. They drop the pumper, and then another one drops the water container. And it hooks to the pumper system. And they hook up the hose, and they go down from the top. And they have gravity on their side. I think if they could have done that in 9/11, they could have suppressed the fire. Because they couldn't get through the bottom, they had to fight through. But if they were fighting it from the top and the bottom, the building would have never collapsed. And if you add foam, because, high heat, until you eventually adapt to the modern systems, it works, but it still works for any type of fire. No matter what happens, it works perfectly. And those people that were trapped in the upper floors that couldn't go down because the stairwells and everything was cut, they were trapped and they couldn't go down, so they ended up jumping. Because the only choice was to go higher, and they didn't want to go higher because then you have to jump from even higher. But they were forced out by the heat. People don't want to burn to death. You don't understand. They didn't want to jump, but it was either burn to death or fall to death. They chose out the window. Not willingly, but that's what the brain chose for them. And so they went out the window and fell to death, and my friend Eddie was exiting the building as they were hitting the atrium. Boom, boom, boom. And he looked up. He's like, what the hell is going on? He knew the fire and everything. But he told me, he's like, then he looked up and he saw the bodies hitting this atrium, glass atrium. Boom, boom, boom. Because they were forced out the windows. So people don't talk about all the people that fell to their death because of the extreme heat that were trapped on the upper floors. They couldn't get down. But helicopters solve that, and when you do the wind vortex, which I just solved from the rotators, the vortex of the helicopter dissipates in 30 feet. So you don't get that big wind from the helicopter. 30 feet and it's gone. It just vaporizes. So you don't have to worry about the helicopter blowing people off the roof or anything else. All resolved. No mas. But here, I get this guy behind me and now honking at me. Here, I'll put on my flashers. You don't get a right to tailgate. And why are you hostile? You're being hostile to me. I'm not being hostile to you. You're threatening me. I'm not threatening you. There's a big freaking difference. In the law, the aggressor is wrong. That means verbal or physical aggression. They're guilty. It's not if they're guilty. They're freaking guilty. And beeping the horn is aggression. So once you beep the horn, you're the aggressor. You're the person who incited the situation. So they don't understand when they beep the horn, you opened a can of whoop ass. And they're like, oh, my father drove a cab. Do you know how many times in all those years I drove with my father, and it was years, how many times he used his horn? 0. You know that? He didn't use his horn once. And he picked people up at the curb and dropped them off at the curb. He didn't stop in the middle of the street. He didn't block traffic. It's the same way I did in the Uber. I used my phone and called them if they were running late. Are you coming down? I didn't sit out there, boom, boom, or sit out there yelling. I just used my phone. Or I text them. Like I go to my friend Costa's house. And sometimes he's running late. And I would text him that I'm outside. And if he didn't respond, then I would ring the phone. And if he didn't, I'd just leave a message. And then I wait, and then I text again. Or I park the car, go up and knock on the door. I didn't sit there, hey, Joey, come on. I grew up with babies. These people haven't had a come to Jesus moment. Go disturb the little kid and wake up, and you're like tired, and all of a sudden, as my friend Pete, who baby was struggling, and I helped him through it. Vincent, he had, what do they call that? But wake the baby up. I got the baby. I put him to sleep, fed him well, took care of him right. They slept through basically the night. Truly, if you understand, they're going to sleep through the night. You change their diaper before bed. You understand when you fed them and you give them some time so they pee and poop in the diaper and that, and you do it prior to bed with timing, they sleep through the night. But these people haven't had the come to Jesus moment. But my sister had 8 kids, and then I was around other kids that I had to take care of, that I actually babysat for. So they haven't had the come to Jesus moment when you beep the horn or do these things. So these motherfuckers are not in reality. Because if they truly, like the deadbeat black guys, they fucking abandoned their kids. Sean Kemp, he never had to go through it because he abandoned it. Yeah, he gave child support, but he was never there changing the fucking diapers, feeding the child, going through when the child's sick, nursing the child. I've been through all of that. So all these black fucking niggers, they haven't had a come to Jesus moment. And then they got me serving them at all these places. I have to drive up for Winnetka. I gave up my weekend with my girlfriend, with his friends, going out, and I'm going to Winnetka working a 10 to 6 a.m. shift so I can work, and it's 8 hours without a break. Do you know there's no break? When I work for Pads, it's a 10 to 6 shift. We never sat down. There was no break. I was working from the time I got in the door all the way to the time I left. 8 straight hours. There was no 30-minute break or anything else. The only time I got a break if I had to take a pee. I never went poo because it's not my natural cycle, but I think I might have went pee a couple times. And there's another guy with me. We didn't get any break. We worked 8 hours straight. No lunch, no break. And I'm there making the bags, the food, the meat, and then I got to make sure there's a late snack tray and things, and they get up in the middle of the night and they come to the window and truly at the kitchen and ask what you need and so on. And we have all this out there. Do you need anything else? Is everything good? How many people, while they're sleeping, have a concierge that stands over them? What have black people done for me? So I was a concierge, standing over them, making sure they slept well. I knew CPR. Not my other guy. I knew CPR. I could provide first aid, mouth to mouth, you name it. They didn't require it. They should have required it, but it's the same thing I did for Urban Ministries. And I'm there waiting on them hand and foot. I clean their bathrooms. I do all this. And while they sleep, I watch over them. And I'm a concierge waiting for them. When they get up, what can I get you? Is the tea, because we had tea, we had water, you had other, we had, do you want something else? We have stuff in the fridge. Can I make you something? Oh yeah, can I make you something? Who is doing that for me? And truly, and no fucking charge. They didn't pay for anything. Everything was free, including my fucking concierge service. Free! And that means I was certified in CPR. Not once, numerous times did I get the certification. So it wasn't once, I got numerous times. And I took advanced injury classes and that. And I corrected the CPR. And the Red Cross corrected their methods. That was me. They applied it, but it was my intellectual property. But where is the concierge service? All I get, these motherfuckers beat me in the street. I go in the bar just to get something to check out the inside, and some black guy sits across from me. I sat away from all the black people in a corner by myself. On the phone, away from everybody. He came to me. And then he eavesdropped, and then he threatened me. And then he told me to stop searching and told me, I asked, do you work here? No. Hold it, you don't work here? No. And then I told him to go fuck himself. But first I asked, do you work here? No. She didn't have a problem, the female bartender. As I talked about water purification and that, and I gave her a compliment. I said, she was in shorts. I said, you have very nice legs. But she stayed on the other end. Then she was out after the fight outside. She's saying that I'm a big racist, the most racist thing she's ever heard in her life. How the fuck is that possible? I posted all my freaking searches, everything I did and said. How is that possible? So, I bent over backwards. They didn't get beat by a black guy, big, powerful black guy with a 2x4 as a child, or black people sticking guns to their head, or coming after them with baseball bats. Black kid at Benedictine comes after me with a baseball bat. And I take Will home back and forth, a black kid. I drive him for free from Benedictine, Kansas, Atchison, to Chicago for free, and then back for winter break, and I bring him back and forth for fucking free. I paid for the gas. He didn't pay for shit. So, 24/7 concierge kissing their fucking ass as they abuse me through my whole fucking life. And then over the last 10 years, they decided to step it up. You think they would be repenting? They're fucking nuts. And let's go into the Hispanics or the Asians or all the others. Truly, whites, you name it. That I bent over backwards. And you disrespect me? And God's watching. Like he said, he'll kill one of you or all of you. That means eternal fucking death. You're fucking garbage to him. You gotta prove you're born a sinner. That means you're fucking scum to God. You gotta prove yourself different. Just as the disciples did. They had to prove themselves not scum. You're born with a challenge. You're predestined for what? Eternal damnation. You're not predestined to be saved. You're predestined to be condemned. That's the Adam and Eve, the original sin. You're predestined to be condemned. You have to prove God you're worthy. So I say, I don't do it. You send yourself to hell. It's like the fucking Arabs. What have they done for their fucking people? I know what I've done for them from fucking teenagers on up. What the fuck have they done for their people or their fucking origin country? But some reason they open their fucking mouth. That's why I contacted my friends, and I go overseas and they're part of the royal family. They'll chop off your head. I'm not making an idle threat. I go by their protocol. So it's a little bit different. They understand, at least they understand there's this delineation, and if you cross it, there's no coming back. That's one thing they understand. You think there's always coming back. They have a delineation where there's no coming back. There's no tomorrow. You're not going to breathe again. I'm not trying to incite something, but this has been going on for 20 years. Plus, I had it. And I still been doing all the righteous actions, but I still been preaching the same thing. So again, have that black guy help them. I shouldn't lift a hand. If they're so charitable like they say they are, then why didn't I find a lot of black missionaries? We sponsored a black missionary family. They came from Trinity College. Good people. Truly salted earth, good people. But that was it. And David's church sponsored missions. All missions. I sponsored missions. I fasted for missionaries. You name it. And I didn't run into too many black missionaries. And I didn't run into black people that were funding missionaries. And my God rest Brenda, my client, she was a praise minister. And she was an awesome black lady in the church. And she was going to bring me into the church, but she ended up dying to teach financial literacy with inside the black church. But we talked about many things, and she had influence, but she got cancer, and she passed. But she was really good person, and she was a praise leader, and her husband, nice guy, but I didn't interact with much. But she made sure that people were taken care of in her family. How did I meet her? Because she was buying up insurance. She got a standard rating, but somehow we missed the markers for cancer. Truly, and I didn't get to interact much with her. So, like I said, I can't help you if you cut me out. It's just like a doctor. If you cut them out, then they can't assist you. So you cut God out with your actions. The only way you get God to help you is by doing the right things. You don't do the right things, you're already in shit. He's not going to help you, and you don't understand. You get no help. You got to earn it, just as I did. I understood that since childhood. That I had to show that I was different. I had to prove that I was different. That I wasn't like all these others. I understood that as a child. So, you're born to be condemned. That's the whole point of Revelations in the last clearing. You're not going to be saved. You're going to be put to waste. So that's why I tell you, most everybody goes to hell. But some reason, you don't believe me. But Jesus had to prove himself, did he not? 40 days and 40 nights with Satan in the cave. Even he had to go to the cross. He had to prove himself. Somehow, you don't have to. Moses had to prove himself. David had to repent and prove himself. And all the others. And when I say David, early on, later on, he made mistakes. And then he had to repent. He fell. Like Samson fell. And they had to repent. But I don't get it. So when I say the bums on the street are going to burn in hell, you think I'm lying. I'm not lying. They're predestined to be condemned. They have to show themselves as worthy. As I use Glow as an example. She had arthritis and all these different pains. She loved God from the day she was born. She loved God at the time she was dying. She never changed. No matter what she went through, and it was enlightening. And I don't know if anyone recorded the sermon or a service, but Chad did read from her diary, and it was very enlightening because her own husband didn't know her suffrage. He didn't know all of that. When he read through the diary, he broke down even further that these things, and the funny thing is, as I point out to Simon and others with Grace and many others, I'm like, so you're all these advanced physicians, and you have somebody standing in front of you. I have the email, and you have somebody standing in front of you in church, and that person is incredibly hurting, and I sent this email out, and I said to him, I'm like, there's your opportunity right there. But Simon went to Northwestern. He didn't offer. Did he talk to Chad in that? I never heard him about, hey, maybe things aren't going right at UIC. Maybe you should talk to some of the specialists at Northwestern. He went over to her house. He knew of her condition. I was around them. He never talked about it. I was the only one. So, and I pointed this out. Yeah, I wrote him that email in 2009. But I said this, and I'm like, you have opportunity right in front of you. What are you doing about it? I've done all that. I was on the bone marrow donation, and I give to my nephew Dan. He donated bone marrow, who saved somebody who had leukemia. He was on the bone marrow donor. Never knew. I never told him. He did it on his own. Matt sent into Locks of Love the help. I did Locks of Love as well, but I found out from Matt. I never knew of Locks of Love, so I sent it in. But you think they would have it up at all the hair salons. But again, even if you don't have people getting cancer, people are balding and need wigs, and they can transfer into a for-profit and then pay you. The strands have to be so long. But again, I did that. I found out about the bone marrow, which I registered in 2005 for that because Alex, who went to Johns Hopkins, who was at Cook County, was part of it. The funny thing is, when you go and give blood, they don't tell you that you can sign up for these different types of organizations. I found Living Transfer at Northwestern on my own. But the funny thing is, none of these charities say, hey, you can do service over here. If you're doing Chicago Care, maybe you think about Gateway Green. Maybe you think about Friends of the Park. Shouldn't they do that on their websites? Suggest other people, if you like doing this, they don't have activities all the time. So maybe you want to deal with Friends of the Park or Gateway Green or, Chicago Care. That's 3 of them together, but there are others. And if you like doing that stuff, some people do. They like working with the gardens. They like working with, horticulture and so on. So why don't they suggest that? I gave the Life Source blood for decades, as well as the Red Cross. So the Red Cross doesn't have all my donation records. And I gave platelets, I think, in plasma. I don't know what the hour and something was. I forget which. But the whole point is they should cross-reference each other. And because if you like doing this, then you might like doing this. Or if you're going overseas and you donate to the Red Cross here or Life Source, or there's Vivient now. I don't know them, but again, if you're going overseas and you're stationed over there, even in the U.S. military, there's 80 countries, 750 bases, plus all the naval bases. Because Yemen and that is not like an official base, but it could be. But Google has employees overseas in that. And so they can refer to partners. And they have your stuff. So they can protect your genetics and everything else. And if it's not being used, it's got to be returned to them. The blood banks take it back. And I showed the blood banks how they could take back product and break it down and use it for many other things. Even if it's past its expiration. There are many other things that can use past expiration. So it's still good, just in a different form. So again, they give it, and if it's not used, it has to come back. And they don't know who the donor is or anything else, but now with genetics and that, you can build facial recognition and that from the DNA. DNA and RNA, that is much easier to build. But the whole point is, they just give it back. And so they enclose it, and they got to make sure it's used, and you don't lose a bag of blood. So what's ever not used, even if it's a half a bag, that you only used half the bag, well, the other half comes back. It comes back. And this is where China and India, let's say China and North Korea, I'm sorry, but this is where you make yourself very vulnerable. And I would make a pitch to the United Nations. Do you know, if there's a tragic event of any kind, that you're going to need these infrastructure supports for the tragedies? So Russia doesn't think about that, or the Ukraine. But if I was Trump, that's part of the negotiation. Do you know you're basically outing yourself of all these other charitable resources? That if you were good Russia, you would access the Rockefeller Foundation, the MacArthur Foundation, the Gates Foundation, the Bono Foundation, and many others that can provide resources to solve your issues in your country, from vaccines to many other things. So this is how embassy people are so stupid. Our consulates are idiots. And not only do you get resources from us, you get resources from Canada, Great Britain, and other strategic partners. So you open yourself up, as my friend did charity. He went into India when he lived in Great Britain, Peter, who I worked at Lowe's. And it was more about helping those with family planning. Truly. And they were fixing men, tying their things. And that's back in, the early 90s. But that was back in the 80s because, Britain was in India. And so many British charities operate in India. And he operated. And he was the one that told me about the kids in the markets and that. And he said a lot of people from the Middle East were actually flying in and buying Indian children. Probably for servants or something. It wasn't, they weren't looking to adopt. But again, all those British charities, they serve in India. So you open yourself up to all these resources. This is a part of how you negotiate and create leverage. But Trump is a fucking moron. And so have our other people been moron. And I'll call Reagan a moron, and Clinton and Barack Obama a moron. Truly. Because they were missing out on so much, and I was there trying to enlighten them. And I talked to charities about being the total solution. I've been talking about this since literally I've been a child. But I understood this. I studied conflicts. And with that, I studied all these negotiators and conflicts, and I watch what they do, and I look for the donut holes. That's what you do in financial planning. You look for the arbitrages. You look for the opportunities. And so I seek out the donut holes. And that's why me and David became partners. He was looking for the donut holes. The true opportunities that other people aren't doing. where things aren't being fulfilled. So again, looking for these opportunities. And this is how you create it. And we haven't been doing things correctly. Reagan did a lot of things correctly. Eisenhower was healing and he did a lot of things, but things opened up. Part of the thing is Eisenhower could have done a better job in China. We lost China. They should have went after the corruption within Park and Chiang Kai-shek, I think it was, that were highly corrupt. Like, look at this piece of shit. Is he an emergency vehicle? Is he emergent? What do you mean? I ran late for everything. When I get there, I get there. I have no right to threaten somebody else's life. Right there's an aggressor. You should go to jail. You impound the car. You have no right to threaten anyone else's life. This is a line. Take another street. Don't you do that on the expressway and that? Truly, with the expressway, you look at the GPS and it gives you alternative routes. So you do that, you go to fucking jail and we impound your car. Truly. And if you get upset, we keep you in jail. And then we throw you into hard labor. Up to Siberia, the exchange with Russia. Throw some Mexicans in Siberia. I want prison exchange. So if they don't think it's tough enough, well, we can throw them into some other gulags, right? We can create an exchange program. We did with Mexico. We had El Chapo up here. The system couldn't hold them in Mexico. Well, we brought them up here. That's an exchange program. Mexico turned him over to us for us to imprison him. So, again, we're already doing it. So, create an exchange program. If not, send them to Finland. Truly. And let them see what it's like to be out there shoveling sidewalks in sub-zero temperatures. They have to be broken in a come-to-Jesus moment. And we need to set up the exchanges. So, it's just like missionaries, they voluntarily go into these places. These are evil motherfuckers. They don't get to say so. So, you send them. Truly. And see. Let them go live in sub-Saharan Africa for a while. Cleaning up shit over there. Truly. Send the prisoners over. We have the monitoring systems. And they can have guards, and if you're free to shoot and kill. So, that's fine. It's the same thing they did in Ghana. So, again, send them to sub-Saharan Africa. They say, because I dealt with people from all over the world, they come to America and they talk about opportunity, opportunity, opportunity. I have refugees I dealt with that were from Africa through Lakeview, and they opened a restaurant in Rogers Park. Black refugees. They were from Somalia. You know, the whole thing about the comb growing up in Somalia, and they show you a comb, and they say, what is this? This is 100 Somalians. It was done as a joke, but it was a way to communicate starvation. So it was a way to tell you what was going on. So you say cruel? No, it wasn't cruel. I understood that. And you look at all the little things on a comb, the little things, and like, the comedians, comedy was to deliver messages in a way, and this is why I used to like WGN. They could have used their routines to deliver positive messages and messages that are negative. So what do comedians do? They take a negative message and they deliver it. Now go back in the archives at Late Night at Harlem. They did it right. And they would talk about negative tendencies of black people. Eddie Murphy did it somewhat, but Late Night at Harlem, when I watched this, it was midnight. It was on here in Chicago, so it was 1 a.m. there when I was watching it. But they would come in and talk about these negative things. And there are people like, yeah, that's black people. But the people were laughing, but they were delivering a message. Go watch the Chris Rock video. He makes it into a comedy, but he did the right thing right away. Because they talked about police pulling over black people and, brutality and so on. Well, what did Chris Rock do? Everything he says is absolutely true. Like Kevin, when I got pulled over by a cop, and Kevin started giving the cop all kinds of lip. But since the cop couldn't charge him with anything, he charged me. I kicked Kevin out of the car. Truly. And I didn't care if he had a phone or that. Walk home, I told him. And I never hung out with him again. I'm dealing with the cop, and he's giving the cop a bunch of shit. And rightfully so, they shouldn't have pulled me over. And Kevin was kind of standing up for me, but I told him to be quiet. And he kept on pissing off the officer. So you think Chris Rock is lying? I told him, get the fuck out of my car. And he got out. Right in front of the cop, he got out. And I don't care how you're getting home. Walk. Call a cab. I don't give a shit. He didn't live anywhere close to me. I was by my house about 3 blocks away. My house was right down the street from the Tucson police station. I was almost home. But again, I was dealing, but he was trying to, but after I told him to stop, he kept on going off on the officer. And I'm like, get out. But Chris Rock did it the right way. And that should be published in every school. That should be right there in all the black schools. Truly. But let me give you another case. You say it's racism. It's not racism. There was a case in Colorado, I think it was. Oh. But there was a white kid. He got pulled over by a cop. Cop was white. And he had his window down and everything. And the cop told him to get out of the car. And he said, I'm not getting out of the car. And I don't know if he wanted him to do a sobriety test or that. He wasn't running anywhere. He refused to get out of the car. He didn't start the car or anything. So the cop got pissed and started pulling him out of the car. And they got in an altercation, physical. He didn't grab the gun, but the cop throwing him to the ground ended up killing the kid. It was pulling him over for a speeding ticket or something, but he wanted him to get out of the car, and he told him, I'm not getting out of the car. The cop should have waited, called for backup, which is your supervisor. You elevate it. You don't make the decision. You say, wait here, I got to call my sergeant or lieutenant. They'll be here. You can talk to my superior. So, if not, I can get you a public defender on the line. The public defender should be available 24/7. And that's the whole Miranda rights. If you don't, one will be appointed for you and so on. Well, I believe the cops should give them a pamphlet and write on it. And if you want it, the cops should call right away for you. The thing is, they're supposed to be doing all the right things. They can waive their right, but there's still discovery and everything else they have to go through. So it doesn't stop the process. So again, they're supposed to be doing things correctly. So there's no problem if you have it, call your supervisor. And if the supervisor they have a problem with, they should call a public defender. Buffalo Grove should have a public defender. Truly. And it could be a regular lawyer. It just comes out of the state funds. And they're like, okay, here's the thing. You can call public, or do you want us to call one? We'll get a public defender on the line for you. Because you have the right to remain silent and so on and so forth, and anything you say can and will be held against you in a court of law. If you can't afford a lawyer, one will be appointed for you. And so, again, that's when they're arresting you, but still, it's the same thing. If they feel the injustice is occurring, then feel free. Truly. So you can stay there and wait for your attorney to come on scene. They're in a bill, yeah. But if you can't afford one, I have no problem with the public defender's office. And if Buffalo Grove or Arlington Heights doesn't have one, then they pay a private attorney and they have to have on call. My friends were doctors. You're on call. I was a waiter. I was a manager at places, truly, and I was on call. I worked for Walsh Brothers doing deliveries and other things, and I worked on an on-call basis. I was a temporary labor on call. I come in, do a delivery, I come in, clean some parts, and then I go home. I was there for an hour, there for 3, sometimes there for 8. Whatever they needed for me, I was on call. My sister did on-call labor for Walsh Brothers. She'd be at home and they'd be like, yeah, we need you to go on a delivery. She'd leave the house, go to Walsh Brothers, and then drive the truck, drop off whatever, pick up whatever. She was on-call labor. Whenever needed. And so that's what I did during my first breakdown. I worked on-call. I worked for temporary services and that. Sometimes it was an hour. I think the minimum was an hour that I ever did, not a half an hour. But they have to have minimums. You got to pay for gas and everything. So, again, I think an hour was my minimum. But again, so what? It's going to go through the process. You're not trying to suppress the process. That gets you into manipulation and everything else. That's not what you're supposed to be doing. You're supposed to be laying your groundwork. Because what happens? All these cases end up in plea bargaining or get thrown out. And that's why. And so you have to substantiate everything. What did they do? They did a bait and switch with Mark Fuhrman. And this is why I hate this racism shit. They made him out to be a racist. He wasn't a racist. He didn't tamper with any evidence. But they made him out to be a racist. That's all they did. That's how they got him off. They just played the race card. He committed a double homicide. Then you think the apple doesn't fall from the tree. You think, oh, OJ is all good. He got off. And if you're an innocent person, you moved to Florida after his civil judgment. Why did he move Florida? Because he wanted to escape the civil judgment. Because they have a Homestead Act and other things. And so he wanted to escape paying the Goldmans. Because right after losing the criminal, they filed the civil. They won the civil. OJ moved to Florida. Now, you think, he's off, he's clear, life is good, right? You're innocent. And what does he do? He gets another girl, a white girl, as a girlfriend. And then you think he would be more conservative, right? I just had this. And this is where the other guy's an idiot too. But he starts hitting her on the golf course. Not arguing verbally. He physically accosted her. And the people on the golf course called 911. They didn't call it because they were having a verbal dispute. They called it because he manhandled her. I don't know if he grabbed her or anything else, but he physically... And you just got off getting accused of killing your wife. And then not too long after that, he does armed robbery. So you say OJ was innocent, but right afterwards, now Mark Zimmerman, Zimmerman, he's an idiot. But the thing is, he gets caught with a gun in that. But the reason is he moved to Texas and everything. He's afraid of black people hurting him. His wife divorced him and everything. But because of all the threats during the trial, he moved to another state and he got caught with a gun. But I understand this from other people that left gangs, that they tried to kill them. And they did. And they couldn't have a weapon, and the police weren't protecting them. They didn't have restraining orders against other gang members. Remember the kid in Chicago that was beaten to death in the alley, the black kid? Well, his father was in a gang. His father actually left the gang. And because he left, they tried to kill him in the car, and they missed. But now he was on the news and everything else, and he said, I wasn't affiliated with gangs. I don't know who the shooters were. He knew exactly who the shooters were. He lied to the police. But the thing is, now they couldn't do another drive-by by him. Truly. So they found his kid walking to school and ended up, he didn't tell his kid to stay away from the people in my former gang. I lived with a black guy who I was trying to live with a black guy. There's a black guy who was a client who left the gang, who basically the gang was trying to off him. His brother lived with him, and he was taking care of him, and he was going over his scenario, and his brother knew to stay away from any of his former gang members. So, again, he was somebody I shared with Nardesh, and he needed to get his nails cut. He had really long nails. But he told me that, he got caught with a gun. This is after leaving, and he had a gun and said, why did you have the gun? And I tried to get him the policy at John Hancock because he wanted to protect his brother and buy life insurance. But since he got a charge for carrying an illegal weapon, especially when he's on probation, but he said that they were trying to kill me and I needed to defend myself, and the police aren't defending me. And so I got a gun to defend myself, and then I had an incident where I got pulled over and they had the gun. He never used it. But the thing is, the police don't defend these people. And so what happened, the father lied. He left the gang. And because he left, they wanted to kill him. Well, they couldn't kill him, so they killed his son. But he didn't warn his son. It was two former guys. The kid had to recognize him because he was crossing over the alleyway, and they called him into the alley by his name, obviously. And he went up to him thinking they're friends, and they beat him to death. They bludgeoned him to death. So they killed them really cruelly, unbelievably wickedly. But the thing is that there should be these protections. So when they came by and shot at the house, well, you have to have these protections. And so what do you put in? You can put a shot spotter in your house. Truly, if the police can do it, you ADT, you get a government subsidized alarm system in that and camera monitoring system, and it has shot spotter. Basically, frequency of the gun. All you have to do, it's same. You just shoot different guns, and it sounds totally different than explosives or anything else, a gunshot. And so all you're listening for is with a parabolic mic, that. And it's a unique frequency. And so all you have to do is test the weapons that are out there and record them all. And once you do that, you can pick them up. The acoustic signature immediately. And yes, you can pick up acoustic signatures with infrared from even a greater distance, because the sound might get muffled, but the infrared, and so you can pick up acoustics with infrared. They are a frequency, and they move particles, and they create heat signatures. So again, you can do that from incredibly, you can do a shot spotter from a satellite. Truly picking up an infrared. So you can create a satellite or a drone system overhead, or they can do it in the helicopters. And so they can see the muzzle shots and everything on a battlefield and that, picking up the different infrared signatures. So again, truly, you can see that, and then you can project out. If you see the flash, you can project out the path of the object, because it shows you through the muzzle flash the direction of the object, and you can calculate the speed and everything else from the muzzle flash. So again, these things can be done, but again, they don't do these things, and it frustrates the fuck out of me, and then you make my life a misery. And why should I ever have to fucking fear, especially here in Chicago? So I don't get it.